Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roosevelt Field. I'm Jeff Brandon along with Walt Fry, and this is Norristown Eagle football. And Walt, the first bad night we've had. It's a wet, rainy, cold, miserable evening here. And tonight the Eagles taking on an opponent they perhaps have never seen, certainly not in recent memory, but it's the Panthers of Central Daughin East from out Harrisburg way. And should be an interesting contest. Unfortunately, not too well attended with the bad weather.
No, the weather's definitely holding some people away. It's a pretty raw, nasty night. And also the fact that it's a Saturday night and, of course, a non-league opponent. So a lot of factors working against the crowd size tonight. And it will be very interesting to see how the Eagles come out. They're on a roll, having won 3 of their last 4, playing excellent football last week against the Knights of North Penn. Will be interesting to see if they can get up for this game against the Panthers. Absolutely right. And the Panthers having an improved season this year, coming into this ball game at 3-7 after not winning a game all last year. We know this is the last game for their head coach, Coach Mosley, after a 4-year tenure, so perhaps some incentive for his guys to win the last game for their coach. Yeah, that would be nice, and there's certainly aren't a lot of guys for Coach Mosley to motivate over there. We count 26 on their sideline, 26 players. So a lot of those guys are going to be going 2 ways, and it's a small squad they brought down from Central Pennsylvania. And certainly Norristown taking many positives from the second half of this season. They have had a lot of difficulty this year, finishing games and losing games in the final seconds, but the last month has been a tremendous one for them. And I tell you, the game last week, Walt, was a great breakout game for the junior quarterback, Chris Blake. Absolutely. That was his coming out party. Had a tremendous game, didn't make any mistakes, really led the Eagles when they needed it. And that game, of course, against North Penn was a real backbreaker for them, eliminated any chance that North Penn had of the playoffs if they had a slim chance going into that game. And if you missed it, folks, make sure you check your cable channel here on the Norristown Access channel. Look for that game to come up in future weeks. It was stupendous. An overtime game. Norristown won on the second possession of overtime, 42-35. And as Walt said, the real test tonight for the Eagles is to stay up for this ball game. Ostensibly, the Eagles with one more game this season on Thanksgiving Day against the Colonials of Plymouth Whitemarsh. But, of course, that all dependent upon the play of Plymouth Whitemarsh. They crushed the Whippets of Downingtown last night in the first round of the district playoffs, and they will face the Bucks of Central Bucks West next week in order to go for the district title. My understanding, Walt, is that if the Colonials win that game and make it to the state playoffs, they will not be available for Thanksgiving Day. But as of now, we hope you'll come out and join the Norristown squad here as they finish their season on Thanksgiving morning at 10 a.m. We're ready to play. The Panthers kicking off to the Eagles, back deep, Swittenberg and Stewart. It's going to be taken by Darrell Johnson at the 20-yard line. Johnson looks for room, and he is covered nicely on the downfield coverage by the Panthers. We've seen that a lot this year, Walt, with the up man taking the kickoff. Darrell Johnson's probably done as much kick returning as either Stewart or Swittenberg. Yeah, they certainly do try to stay away from Swittenberg and Stewart back there. Let's set the Norristown offense for you. The quarterback, the junior Chris Blake. The running backs, the great, outstanding sophomore Troy Swittenberg with more than 1,200 yards this year. And at his mate back there, the fullback Garvin Stewart. The wideouts are going to be Zitzer and Pronsati. Zitzer goes in motion to the far side. There's a flag on the first play, and that doesn't bode well for things, does it? Set the defense real quick for you here. It was an offsides call, folks. The Eagles will have 1st and 5. To set that defense on across that front line is Scott Dixon, number 34, David Weiser, number 73, Jesse Haar, 61, John Warnock, 64. The corners are Tyrone Beasley and Tyrell Johnson. At linebacker, Adam Schickley, Jeremy Mumma, Derek Pledger, and the safeties, Mike Goodman and Sam McElwee. We'll get you that Norristown line in just a moment, but right now it's Pronsati to the right, Zitzer in tight. The handoff to Swittenberg. Swittenberg into the secondary, and he's brought down, but not before getting the first down. Troy Swittenberg on the first carry of the game converts for an Eagle first down. It'll be 1st and 10 from the Norristown 43. In at tight end tonight for Norristown, we see Chris Strobel, number 88. The line, we expect to see the tackles, Greg DeLucia, 54, and James Burrell, 77.
At guard, number 78, Doug White, number 66, Yaboa Kabold, and the center, Brian Webster. On first down, Blake to Swittenberg. Swittenberg tied up after only gaining perhaps 2 yards. In on the tackle, number 34, Scott Dixon.
And the Panthers have come out trying to stack that line of scrimmage against the Eagles, who are having a great season rushing the ball. Jeff, we were told before the game that the Panthers showed a lot of different looks on defense. Sometimes the standard 4-3. Sometimes they go with a 4-4, even bring a safety up and go with 9 guys up there near that line of scrimmage. That time they really stacked it up for the short gain.
2nd and 8 for Norristown from their own 45-yard line. This time they put Zitzer in the pattern, but the quick handoff to Stewart is thrown for a loss. Great penetration that time by the Panthers, and it's going to bring up 3rd and long for the Eagles.
And that was just a case of too many guys up there. Not enough guys for Norristown to block everybody the Panthers had up there, and it was Jesse Haar who got through to nail the ball carrier.
So with the 1-yard loss on that carry, it's 3rd and 9 for Norristown, the first offensive possession of this ball game. 10:22 to play here in the first quarter. Blake takes a look at the offense. The straight drop goes deep. Looks like he's going to set up the screen to Stewart. He does. Blocked by Burrell. Springs Stewart, but I don't think he's going to have enough room there, Walt. They're going to bring him down short of the first down. The tackle made by number 32. And that's what I get for calling the number before I call the player. Number 32, Shane Rybarczyk. Maybe that was it. I knew that Shane didn't have an easily pronounced last name. I hesitated to call his number there. 4th down for Norristown, and Albie Morano, the senior kicker, will be in to do the punting chores for Norristown. Back deep for the Panthers is number 81, Tyrell Johnson, joined by, we've got a flag on the play. It's going to be offsides perhaps, and that would be a first down for the Eagles if indeed that's the case. The officials conferring. Oh, that's a costly mistake. I'll tell you, offsides, 5 yards is just what the Eagles needed for a first down. So rather than punting the ball away, the Panthers drawn offsides, and the Eagles keep their drive alive.
And it was a great stop by that smallish defense of the Panthers. They certainly do not want to get into a battle with Norristown where they're on the field that much. Really a good stand here against the visitors. Against the home team Eagles. A great stand by the Panthers, and now the penalty cost them.
On first down again, Swittenberg off the right side. He's got room. Finally dropped at the 29-yard line, but a big gain for Troy Swittenberg. And I'll tell you, the blocking out in front was spectacular that time.
Well, there's really 2 aspects to the offensive line, 3 actually, but there's obviously that contact, that initial contact right at the line of scrimmage where you have to hold your ground, get low, and really push the other team back. There's pass blocking, of course, and then there's the ability to get downfield and block, and we've seen that so much. That time, the guard, Greg DeLucia, pulling out in front of Troy Swittenberg. Also, James Burrell, very active this year.
On first down, Blake again, the same play to Swittenberg, but this time the Panthers are all over it. 4 guys each get a quarter of that tackle. On the bottom of the pile, we had number 3, Derek Pledger, along with his teammate, number 81, Tyrell Johnson. Loss of 2 yards on the play brings up 2nd and 12 from the Panther 31-yard line. This time on the reverse, little fake that time goes to Zitzer, and Jim Zitzer pays the price. He is just ripped down by Jesse Haar, number 61. Nobody got fooled on that play, Walt.
No, the Eagles tried to run the end around, and Zitzer, not the fastest receiver on the team, tried to come from that H-back position right off the end of the line. Turns out the Panthers weren't fooled. Zitzer wasn't quite far enough off the end of that line, and as he came through, the Panthers just had to come straight through that Norristown line and to find Jim Zitzer.
You're right, Walt. That was the end around, not a reverse, since it didn't get handed off to anybody before it made its way to Zitzer. We've seen both this year, and that time it was not effective. Zitzer and Pronsati are split this time at the receiver position. The backs are split as well. On 3rd and long, the quick drop. They go to the outside to Pronsati. He's open. He's got it. First down. boy, I'll tell you, great pass by Chris Blake. And Walt, that's just what we saw last week against North Penn when Paul Pronzati brought down 3 touchdown passes.
Yeah, and they found each other in all kinds of situations. Pronzati's short, Pronzati over the middle. He's good at going to the corner of the end zone and finding space there. And that time the Eagles just ran a fade to the outside. Chris Blake with beautiful touch. But Paul Pronzati, as he got to the outside, turned upfield on his man, beat him cleanly, and was even able to turn, wait for that ball to come down. As a result of his turn, he unfortunately lost his footing and fell, or else that would have been 6.
But a big third down conversion, 1st and 10 for Norristown. This time the ball carrier, Swittenberg, gets down close to the 5 before he's dragged to the ground.
And that's the maturity of this Norristown team as they've progressed through the season. You see that it looks like they're going to make the Panthers pay for that costly mistake, jumping off sides on the 4th down punt. Earlier in the season, the Eagles might not have capitalized on something like this, but at this point in the season, particularly with last week's great effort, really not many mistakes by the Eagles, just see them growing as a team. And again, you really hope that we get to see them play on Thanksgiving Day the way they're playing right now.
Absolutely. It'd be nice to finish their season in front of a big crowd. Blake, the handoff again, this time off the left side to Swittenberg, and nothing there. It's going to bring up 3rd and about 6 yards from inside the 10-yard line.
And the Panther defense is based on penetration. They're not going to mess around. They know they have to get in that backfield and put a stop quickly, or else the Eagles are going to overpower them on that front line.
Be interesting to see if the Eagles go to the air here. It looks like Central Daughin doing a respectable job of containing the Eagles' running game. Blake, the pitch, Swittenberg has the corner, touchdown. And that time the Eagles elect to go to the long side of the field there, Walt, and Troy Swittenberg just uses his superior speed to give the Eagles a 6-point lead in this game.
And it's nice to have that line up front, hold their ground, and then aided by a great block out front by Garvin Stewart. Troy Swittenberg didn't meet any resistance until he got to that goal line. Then all he had to do was put his head down and fall forward.
And Blake and Swittenberg have really been in sync on the pitch this year. Very few miscues that we've noticed. Norristown using it effectively here in this first quarter. So whistle down on the field as we await the extra point attempt. It'll be Albie Morano on to kick. Chris Blake doing the holding. Officials call time for an equipment-related issue. That score coming with 5:38 to play here in the first quarter.
Yeah, that's a very effective drive by the Eagles, eating up over half of this first quarter. Really a way to come out and establish themselves and set the tone very early, which is key, as we talked about. Maybe not the biggest game in their season, certainly against a non-league opponent. It's important to set that tone.
The snap is good. Morano's kick is up, plenty of leg, and it's accurate as well. So it's a Norristown 7-point advantage. And the hearty group that came out here to Roosevelt Field provides a round of applause to the hometown Eagles.
That is a 13-play drive, aided by that offsides penalty right in the middle. The Eagles go 70 yards with it. One big pass play, the 23-yard play to Paul Pronzati down the left sideline. But other than that, it was all pounded out on the ground. As Troy Swittenberg gets 7 carries, already 38 yards.
And Walt, certainly a lot to look forward to with next season. Of course, you never like to have a losing season. The Eagles aren't guaranteed of one this year. Should they win tonight, they'll be 5-6. And if they get the opportunity to play on Thanksgiving Day, they would be well tested to come up with a 500 record against a stellar PW squad. But they certainly have the core of their offensive skill players coming back next year in Blake, the quarterback, and Swittenberg, the running back. Swittenberg with 2 years remaining.
Yeah, and where they're really going to hurt next year is this offensive line that has grown so well together over the past 2 years. Only Yaboa Cabold and Doug White, both juniors, going to be back as the starters. Really going to have a big hole in there trying to replace Brian Webster, as well as the tackles in Burrell and DeLucia.
As the Eagles get set to kick off, it'll be Tyrell Johnson and Lewis Motley back deep for the visitors. We see Troy Swittenberg heading to the locker room here. Not quite sure what the issue is there. Hopefully an equipment-related problem. A low kick. Going to be fielded at about the 20-yard line by one of the up men, taken straight up the middle, and a good job that time by Ian Stead, who tripped up the ball carrier. And it'll be 1st and 10 for the Panthers at their own 30-yard line. To set that offense for you at quarterback for Central Dauphin is number 5, Terrence Doyle. His running backs look for Lewis Motley, number 28, to be called most often. Joined back there by number 22, Eric Pavone. The wideouts, number 80, Justin Marsh, and number 81, Tyrell Johnson. And this time, Marsh and Johnson both come to the near side with Motley lined up as well. First and 10 from the 30. Doyle up the middle. Short gain that time for Pavone.
And Jeff, this is an offense that is based on the pass. So the Eagles that time came out in a more standard 4-3 with Brian Webster, James Burrell, Doug White across that front line, along with Dave Artis, number 57. And they came out with the 3 linebackers, DeLucia, Johnson, and number 20, Bobby Davis.
Different lineup than we've seen very often. The corners, Ian Stead and Don Milligan, with A.J. Hamaday in at safety, Garvin Stewart up close. The drop, the lefty, comes to the outside. Stewart had the best shot at that ball. Garvin Stewart did, but it falls between he and Don Milligan, incomplete. So on 2nd and 8, the incomplete pass brings up 3rd and 8.
And it's a different look. It's something the Eagles are going to have to adjust to. This is an offense that, as I said, is based on the pass. Quarterback Terrence Doyle with over 1,000 yards this season, and his main guy is number 81, Tyrell Johnson, over half those yards receiving. Johnson's got 38 catches for 530 yards, so he's the guy to watch for, this time in the slot to the right.
Eagles show blitz. Here it comes. The pitch. They avoid the blitz, get it back to the line of scrimmage and pick up a yard or 2, but it's going to be 4th down. That was the 3rd down carry. I apologize. 4th down, and the Panthers will have to punt. So Norristown gets the ball right back here. Pronsati and Milligan back deep for Norristown to receive the punt. Great snap. Pressure from the outside by Burrell. It's a low end-over-end kick. And Don Milligan wisely just lets that ball die at about the 27-yard line. Wasn't much he could do with it by the time it got to him. That ball was already losing power by the time it got to where he was awaiting.
Yeah, and that wet field is going to eat it up too. And once that ball hits the field, it is going to be slick. So Don Milligan made the smart move to get away from it. No sense taking chances, especially with decent field position to start this drive.
3:45 to play here in the first quarter, and the Eagles, of course, converting on their first offensive possession. A stellar drive downfield, resulting in 7 points. This time the Eagles put the tight end into the pattern and hand off to Stewart. He's got a nice hole opened up for him. Garvin Stewart takes it out to about the 35.
And good work by the offensive line, as Stewart was the only man behind Blake in that backfield. They're going to run the ball. It was going to be Garvin Stewart, but he found some room off of that right side.
Second and 4 for the Eagles. They put Swittenberg in the pattern, but handoff once again to Stewart. Garvin Stewart, a great forward push that time, gives the Eagles a 1st down. I like the way they're spreading the defense a little bit, putting Garvin Stewart outside, moving the tight end outside on the previous play, trying to avoid the Panthers stacking the middle of that line as they did on that first Norristown drive.
They're giving the Panthers a little taste of their own medicine. As you said, Swittenberg in the pattern, putting a lot of guys out there. Last play, 4 of them in the pattern.
This time Swittenberg comes back, receives the handoff, and good tackle that time. Yaboa Cabold was doing the blocking chores on number 34 defensive end Scott Dixon, and somehow Dixon slipped off of Cabold and managed to drop Swittenberg.
And Dixon's a little bit of their size up front, some of the size that they do have at 6'1", 235. So Dixon's a tough guy to get a handle on, and also showed some quickness that time to get around Swittenberg's ankles.
Loss of 3 on the play will bring up 2nd and 13 for Norristown from their own 37-yard line. Pronsati and Zitzer to the left. Swittenberg into the pattern. Blake goes up top. He's got Pronsati wide open. Just overthrows him that time. But I tell you, the defenders were a good 6-7 yards back on that play. Paul Pronsati was definitely open. Chris Blake does not connect, however. So it'll be 3rd and 13 for the Eagles with just about 2 minutes remaining here in the first quarter. Stoppage on the play here as we make sure what down it is down on the field. We were confident that it was only 3rd down. Now everybody else is too. So the Eagles will have a chance to huddle up again. Well, it's been a tough 2 years for Norristown when it comes to the win-loss column. Last year, pretty even season for Norristown, and this one seems to be amounting to be the same thing. When you've got a history and a tradition that says, gee, 9-2, 8-3, that type of thing. It's been a tough couple of years for Coach Grove, I'm sure. Blake over the middle to Swittenberg. Troy Swittenberg has one man to beat. He does it. He might have stepped out of bounds, just a shade short of that first down. It might be time for a measurement here.
Yeah, and they're ready to move the sticks on that far sideline. Well, Jeff, you're right. It's obviously not been the caliber of football that we're used to seeing, and I think it's partly that it could be just a downtime, and it's also a matter of opponent. As we know, Norristown's moving out of the Suburban 1 National for all sports next year except football, and football in 2 years. And there are a lot of schools that are just growing, just have more players to pull from. And that's part of it. It's also been a matter of experience. Norristown's rotated a lot of seniors in there, and they've only gotten to play for 1 year. This year, as we talked about, we see a lot of young guys on this offense and the defensive side, and I think they've adapted real well and going to be real good players.
On first down, Swittenberg finds his way through the mess into the open field. Look at this guy, knocks one player down with a move, but he's brought down from behind. Saving tackle made that time by the defender. That was number 50, Adam Schickley.
And Schickley had to come from behind, but that's what happens when you jam up there on that line of scrimmage. They had 8 guys up, with Norristown having 2 guys in the pattern. That left only 1 safety to go deep. And boy, once Troy Swittenberg was 5 yards into the secondary, there was nobody. He was essentially in front of 8 guys on that Panther defense and only had 3 more to in front of him that he had to beat.
That's got to be every opposing coach's nightmare. Troy Swittenberg in the open field. The handoff up the middle to Stewart. He breaks a tackle. Down close to the 10-yard line and close to another Eagle first down.
And Stewart taking up some of the loaders. Troy Swittenberg just went to the locker room again after that long run. So obviously showing no ill effects in the first visit to the locker room after that run, but
we know Swittenberg's complained a bit of back spasms. He mentioned that after the North Penn game. He was concerned about not being able to play in that contest. Certainly did and played effectively.
Well, you certainly hope they're not recurring, but if they were to recur, this would be the type of night. It is damp and it is pretty raw, but it certainly looks like he's running okay.
Blake on the pitch to Stewart. Stewart fumbles, picks it up, and he's hauled down. So Garvin Stewart does well to retain possession, struggles to try and get back to the line of scrimmage. He's going to be thrown for a short loss on that first down carry.
Yeah, and that's that's what happens when you have to use one guy as your feature back who's not used to playing that role. Certainly Garvin Stewart has a lot of talent in that backfield, but he hasn't run that pitch sweep much. And that time with the pitch a little bit low, couldn't quite get his hands on it as he tried to turn it upfield.
In the backfield, replacing Swittenberg, we see number 7, Don Vaughn.
And Vaughn, in the game which Swittenberg did have to leave because of those back spasms, had a huge game. So certainly the Eagles are not without weapons when Don Vaughn is in the game.
And that's the end of the first quarter with the Eagles up on top, 7-0. And they are knocking on the door again here. They're faced with 2nd and 13 from just inside the 14. They do have the chance to get a first down at about the 6-inch spot or so, but essentially it's a 2nd and goal situation for the Eagles.
And Jeff, back to your point about the Eagles and how they've struggled a bit these past 2 seasons, I think credit should be given really to the coaching staff for, especially this season, adjusting to the talent that they've had. Really what's happened these past 2 years is, aside from the schools getting bigger in population, it seems like the teams are playing have just gotten bigger player for player. And we've seen the Eagles really just rolled over in a couple games just from the point of a size mismatch. But they've really adapted their talent. And with Chris Blake's coming out party last week, a 10-for-12 effort for almost 100 yards, the Eagles have really made the adjustments to suit their talent. And, of course, when you have a guy like Troy Swittenberg, you can do that a little bit. Swittenberg's very versatile as well, but they've worked Paul Pronsati in a lot to the point where he's now Chris Blake's main receiver.